I am Patrick O'Neill, Chobo PM, and I'm here with Scott Smith, also known as SirScoots, of course. I'm going to read off this because your list of your history is quite substantial.
I'm old, is what you're trying to say.
I want to get everything as right as I can. If I get anything wrong, please feel free to interject and interrupt me. So SirScoots, been around for a long time. You came over in about 1999 to esports. You discovered Counter-Strike. You founded UGP, is a team with you and your friends. You played. You came on to GotFrag. You helped build that into the premier site in the West, the premier esports site. You pioneered streaming in esports with GotFrag TV. You're now obviously the CEO of Evil Geniuses, the most successful esports team in America. You have your hands in everything in Quake, StarCraft, Street Fighter, you name it, you guys got it. You guys have some of the biggest names, obviously, Idra, Justin Wong. Would you say that that's accurate?
Yeah, I mean, to correct a few little differences, I'm COO of Evil Geniuses. Alex Garfield is CEO.
Okay.
Basically, we run it together, but slightly different title. At one point, I was CEO, but we decided to do a title switch based on what we were doing for our job duties. It makes more sense. I'm more operations, and he's more on the executive sponsorship level, so it made sense. And it's more his team than mine by far. He's been around with this team for quite a long time. GotFrag stuff is accurate. I wouldn't say I would say we were one of the pioneers of video streaming. We came in after the ITGs and TSNs were already doing video, so we certainly weren't the first. I think even to this day, we maybe did Counter-Strike better than anyone has ever done with our instant replays and our scoreboards and all the stuff we did. But, yeah, other than that, fairly accurate gaming resume, I guess.
All right. So we're here in Atlantic City, IPL. I mean, we're here right now in sort of a bit of a hectic moment, so it's an interesting moment to ask, but how has the IPL been going for you?
It's been going very similar to most events, and most events that are first time. You know, there's been internet issues, there's been computer issues, and there's also been some great stuff. They've got great production value here, you know, so when everything was working by the end of day yesterday, it's fantastic production value in both their ballrooms, if you will. You know, I know that this is going to come out after the fact, but today we're dealing with an accident with a Comcast truck that knocked a transformer down, I guess, and literally killed the Comcast internet in Atlantic City. So, you know, IGN is
in all of New Jersey.
All of New Jersey.
That's
even.
What they're talking
about. God. So I know that IGN IPL is going into scramble mode, and last I heard before I stepped into here was they were in the process of literally talking to satellite truck companies, but that takes quite a ramp up. Like, guy just doesn't hop in a truck and go, "I'll bring my truck down." There's a process to getting one, so they're working with Comcast and the hotel to drop a satellite dish on the roof, which is sometimes easier to do than a truck, depending on where the trucks are. So it's still going to take hours for them to get it all plugged in and working, but that hopefully will be the solution, and we can continue to kick ass. Yesterday ended up being a great day. Yeah. So I think they all went to bed like, okay, we had some glitches in the morning, as every event does on that first day, and they woke up to a very much live event slap in the face. You know, I do event logistics for a living as my old job, and shit goes wrong all the time, and this is a big one. You know, it's not like, oh, a computer crashed, oh, we got a bad video card. This is a pretty epic thing that they're going through. The bonus for all of us, much like when it happened to MLG, is they then figured out how to be redundant so it never happened again. And so this will probably lead to these guys doing some sort of satellite solution at all their events, just like MLG decided that was the way to spend the money, right? You know, it's very expensive to bring a truck in. But as I was having lunch with Thorzane and Select, it's like when your business is relying on the internet for your playing field, for your journalists, for the stream of it, everything we do needs the internet, you know. And LAN play could have maybe saved a little bit of this, right? You know, they could at least be playing some matches. We can't do anything. Yeah. So for all of us that are on the outside looking in, you know, IGN, I bet, finds budget, and they do what MLG does, and they bring their own truck. You know, it's probably the cost of doing business on this scale of event, because you can't, it's not like a little LAN that you go, oh, shit, well, we'll start tomorrow. Like, you can't, you know. So maybe out of, you know, a bad situation comes an even better one next time.
Yeah, and you know what? It is only, even though it's all hectic, it is only Friday. To be perfectly honest, if they get this set up, if they get the schedule back on and they have a great Saturday and Sunday, this will be forgotten.
Absolutely, it always is. You know, it's terrible right now. I'm sure all the sites are blowing up, but they're ADD, right? So you're absolutely right. And again, normally Friday is the start for us, right? You know, Thursday is a travel day generally. It's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So they had a packed schedule, so they got a lot of catching up to do. But you know, they're very responsive and they're on it, and they'll spend the money to get it up. It's just a pain in the ass. It takes time.
All right, let's go back a few years to when both you and I were younger men, and talk about when you first came into esports. So obviously it was Counter-Strike. Can you pinpoint a moment when you really had an esports epiphany, when you really realized that there was a future here?
I would say my first live event, which would have been a CPL. You know, by then, you know, UGP was up and running, and we were playing in the OGL and the ladders of the day. But it was still very online, and so to me, it was already a sport. But our team treated it very much, you know, like you would treat like a bar-sponsored softball team. Like every Tuesday, you show up, you play some softball, and you go have some beers. We were never going to be the 3Ds or, you know, back then it was X3. You know, that wasn't our aspiration to be any sort of pro team. And then I went to a CPL, and we basically all saved our money up and said, let's go, because back then it was a LAN party too, right? You dragged all your gear, big BYOC. It wasn't just a competition. And we knew we'd get our ass kicked by everybody. And I walked in, and I saw the stages, and I saw all the people, and I as a player, I watched, you know, the MTW GOL teams and the Europeans and the SOAs and, you know, the TSOs in North America and the 3Ds, and I went, wow, these guys are so much better than the people that I thought were pretty freaking good, right? And, you know, there wasn't a whole lot of staging and streams back then, but it's like anything else. There's a competitiveness to it, and then there's a skill gap that truly separates those that do it for fun and those that are phenomenal at it. And I don't know if I ever really thought we'd be where we are right now, where we're worried about rolling in a satellite truck, but at least not back then. But that was certainly my epiphany when like 1,000 people dragged all their shit. We paid all our plane tickets to come play those guys. And we got 13-0'd by the Euro teams. You know, that's when you played to 12 and just got, for lack of a better word, got our shit pushed in. But we had the best time to get it. You know, it was amazing. So that was it. You know, and I come from an event logistics background, so I walked into a fairly nicely dressed ballroom, and I saw the business side of it. Their trade show booths. That was, you know, there were sponsors, and light bulb just went off. I'm like, this is real. You know. And as I said we did a live on 3 last night, for a long time, the competitors and that hardcore fan base, we were the fan base. You know, you were a player and then you sat and watched. And you didn't have someone that just spent their money and took their vacation time off to come watch. You were participating somehow and then hanging out. And now you have truly people that are like planning their vacations around these events. They might play casually, but they're coming to be a spectator, right? And that certainly changed it.
From there, Midway, the founder of Godfrag, asked you to come on board. So tell me about how he asked you, when that was, and what you did there.
Yeah, I want to say it was my second or third CPL, and I was there with UGP, and I'd known all those guys, and obviously supported their site. I've always been a very outspoken, like the objector to the norm and the ass kissing and the circle jerk of everything's great, this is great. Like I've always shined the flashlight of like, have you thought about this, devil's advocate, you know? And Godfrag at that time was the forum to do that, you know. And I would call him on shit. I would see like, you know, why are you know, they're supposed to be the ESPN, they're supposed to be this non-biased journalist site. Why are you not ripping to shreds these organizations that aren't doing it the right way? And Midway made an absolutely valid point on your show the other night, you know, obviously a couple weeks ago, that he couldn't. And they had to, it's a fine line to walk when you need to get in the door, and if you piss on their parade, you're not invited, you know. So, but I was like, you should be talking about this. This is bullshit. You're our voice, you know. And so I was known as that guy, you know, on their forums. And, you know, got to meet them and hang out with them. And it was actually Lee Chen, more so than Midway, that I was talking to at one of the CPLs, and you know, and I started explaining my event logistics thing, and another buddy of mine at the time, Jason Baker, Alchemist, he went by. Him and his buddies were doing the MFA VP video series, where they would go And they were one of the first guys. They made a movie called Electronic Warfare, if you've never seen it. And they were the first guys to go to an event, take footage of the SKs and the 3Ds playing, then go grab the demos and sync their live camera player stuff, which now we take for granted, right? You do it live on the fly, and sync it to the rounds. Built their own scoreboards, built their own graphics. And I was like, these guys get it. And so Alchemist and I were always talking about, we should do something like this ourselves. And he was also kind of a guest caster for TSN. And led me to talking to Lee, and we were chit-chatting one day about what I do and everything. And I was getting ready to go to the Olympics. I was doing event logistics for Coke. And I'm like, you guys need help? And at that point, no one was getting paid, right? I mean, I'm looking at people in the room that actually volunteered for us for many years. Sam's over there. We didn't get paid. You volunteered to write, you volunteered to admin tournaments, you volunteered to do all that shit. And I had a real job at that point, so I wasn't looking to make a career change. And I'm like, you guys looking for any help? I'd love to get into like what this TSN and ITG shit is doing. How do I get involved, right? Because for a couple years, I didn't want to be anything. I didn't want to help with the team. Our team was fun. It wasn't meant to be a 3D. And Lee's like, absolutely, let's figure out how we do this. And then he talked to Jason Kuhn at Midway. We all chatted. And I think I joined as managing director just to kind of give my input, almost consult, right? And that led to eventually running the content crew, which eventually led into us finding some money and building a budget to then literally fire up Godfrey TV. And that's what I then shifted and did full time.
Okay, this was relatively early in the lifespan of esports. So, the whole landscape was different. How important was Godfrag back then?
It was the English source for Counter-Strike news at the time. There was one other site at that point, Gamers NU? Gamers, that was it, I think. And, teams were doing some team content, but no one, that didn't exist. No one had ever, it was leagues doing some content around their event, and it was teams covering, their particular part of the event. Godfrag started because a bunch of guys went to the CPL, and they started covering RDW scores before it was even, because they were all on that team. I don't know if Midway shared that story. So Lee Chen's at home, and they're all on RDW, this clan or team. And this guy Joker, who worked with Godfrag and Midway, they're all at the event. And they're like, hey, everyone wants scores and updates, and the event's not doing it. Can we use our own website to do it? And Lee Chen's like, yeah, go for it. I'll throw a page up for you. So they started, doing some reporting, and Midway's very much a sports guy, right? So that's always been his take on it. Killed their hosters. Like, literally, so many people were so excited about someone's writing content, someone's putting scores up for us, brackets, that, they killed their little hosting package, and then the light bulb went off for them and went, holy shit, we got something here. No one's doing this. So they, we called ourselves the ESPN of Counter-Strike, and now, for that game, I would say it's halflifetv.org, but they weren't around back then. So I think we were an incredibly important voice and place of a community, if you will, for the game.
Okay, let's talk about Godfrey TV. You mentioned before that you weren't the first. So briefly talk to me about who was doing streaming up to the point when you started Godfrey TV?
Mostly in the States, it was two companies. It was TSN, Team Sportscast Network, and then ITG inside the game, which was DJ Wheat and crew. And you had Hunter and Booberman and all those guys on TSN. They both started, as shoutcasting companies, and people still call what we kind of do sometimes shoutcasting, and I have no idea where the name comes from. And it comes from the Shoutcast server system that you were able to use to stream live audio. So they were shoutcasters. Then they discovered video, and then they were the first. They were certainly pioneering it. And we looked at what they did, and we looked at what we did as a content site in print, and went, we can do this better. Because we have this whole resource. We have game sense statistics. We have more money. Let's open our own thing and do it. Things we did differently, because Counter-Strike is a very, very hard game to properly show the action. It's 10 guys all running around a map with POV views. Much different than a Street Fighter or a Quake. You got two guys to pick who you're going to show, right? And you can't miss the action. It's like watching a football game, and the camera stays on the quarterback after he throws the ball, right? And never follows it to the guy that catches it and scores the touchdown. So we invested in a TriCaster, which gave us many inputs, and we literally we had 6 Half-Life TV inputs. So we could at least put, in the way we did it, we designated 4 of those computers for POV. We set up basically a mini little production truck, because a director needs all sorts of camera angles, right? So we'd take our Half-Life TV cameras and we would put 2 on 2 of the 5 terrorists, and so if it was complexity plan, we'd like put one of the ISOs on fraud for now to start. We would put a couple on the CTs, and we would take the other ones and we'd float them in third-person view over the choke points, over bomb sites, right? And we literally had 2 guys that did nothing but drove those cameras for us. Alchemist sat as the director in between them and me on the switch, and then you also had your live cameras. So at CPO, we had live cameras. And we called the show like a sports guy would. And when we did it remotely and we were delayed, we would use the ScoreBot system of IRC because it was in real time. Half-Life TV was delayed, and we would scout the ScoreBot. And we'd have a guy who would watch it, because it was usually about a round or a round and a half ahead. It's a little bit of magic for you. So, he would sit there and he would watch, and he'd go, oh, fuck, okay, fraud kills 3 next round. Make sure we're on fraud. And, so we it's almost like we were like seeing the future. And couldn't do it at a live event because it was all synced live, but when we did stuff remotely, it was perfect. You literally never missed a shot. Because what everyone else was doing and what people still do now is for that particular game is the casters are like hitting their space bar going from player to player to player. So this guy dies and falls over, and they're like trying to find the action. It's just not conducive to telling the story of a Counter-Strike round, because there's a flow to it. Did they save? Did they buy? Where are they going? Oh, they're stacking up. And if you can show those different angles, instead of the first guy just running towards catwalk with guys behind him, if you can show that, and then you show that camera up here, and you see them all turn the corner, and they stop, flashes come out, and you jump back in POV when he's running up the stairs, you get people at home going, oh, fuck, all right, here they go, here they go, here they go. It's just a really difficult game. So that's, I think, where we changed it. And we were using the TriCaster VT technology, which has now, I still own a TriCaster. I own a new HD one. That's what these guys are switching all the stuff with. And it had the ability to let you record what you were streaming and quickly and backtrack. So we could do instant replay. So if we would have recorded that amazing 3-run shot of frauds, I could turn to a guy and go, resync that. And he'd pull it back. We'd run a graphic, instant replay, slow it down, and just like sports, if the time was appropriate, we could show it. And when the first time we did instant replay at CPL 2006, people lost their freaking mind. They're like, are you kidding me? How are they doing that? What is this magic? When we was working for ITG, they then bought a TriCaster. TSN bought a TriCaster. So, yeah, we innovated it, but, it didn't help. Game's dead, kind of. CSGO maybe might recover it. So that's how Goffrag TV got rolling.
Well, let's talk, what was the business model for it?
Business model was just like traditional sports or traditional TV. You sell, at that point, there was no Twitch TV, there was no Ustream, there was no free bandwidth. You had to either work a sponsorship deal with a hosting company to give you the bandwidth and pray to God that, you didn't make them so mad because you sucked all their bandwidth. Or we hooked the deal up with OctaShape, which was a peer-to-peer bandwidth service. And, they kind of sponsored us, but we had to actually buy our bandwidth. So then you would, there was no, easy serve ads. Like right now, you're streaming, you go, play a commercial, and you get a piece of that, right? So we had to go sell the programming. So at that particular event, we went to CPL sponsors, and we went to AMD and all of them and said, hey, this is what we're doing. You want to buy in? Your logo goes here. You get a brought to you by AMD, and just like traditional sports, and then they would give us commercials, and we run them in the show, and that's how we got paid.
How did advertisers react when you came to them with this idea?
They understood it, but they were obviously very hesitant of the numbers would be anything worthwhile. But back, at our first event, we hit 5,000 concurrents. You would have thought that we all had died and gone to heaven. It was the craziest. We just beat everyone's record. We're at 5,000 concurrents. 5,000 concurrents. Kurtz. And now, like, you get any of these guys get 5,000, they'd be fired, right? I mean, but back in the day, that was sick. So it was well received. I mean, we kept getting funding. We were able to then turn that and start doing Gottfried revival tours and like taking those, in retrospect, really small numbers and exciting people and like selling and then starting to sell into the content.
Right now, streaming is obviously a huge part of a revenue stream for players, teams, and everybody in the industry, really. Back then, did you recognize how important it might become?
Absolutely. I don't think any of us, we all wanted this to happen, but you know, when you're knee deep in it and it's your own passion, you know, you drink your own Kool-Aid a lot, right? And you're oh, it's going to happen one day. TV's going to come in and it's going to save us. And then TV came and we went, oh, are you fucking kidding me, right? We don't have to mention names. So we knew, just like the site was acting like a sports conduit for the fan, the video content would do the same thing, right? And people are lazy, right? So when you can read something or watch something, the less cerebral people want to just sit and watch and be entertained, right? And again, sports on TV, sports on the internet, you know, we were streaming a sport. And we treated everything, like, again, instant replays, lower thirds, graphics, using our stats system to talk about it like a sport, you know, and DAR and all the different stats we came up with when you parsed all that. It was a sport to us. So we knew that we were helping. I don't think we thought that we were a game changer. But much like you see today, where, you know, MLG sees what IPL does and IPL sees what, you know, MLG does and NASL, they're all, like, leapfrogging each other in technology and cool features, which is fantastic for all of us. We all win, right? So when we started doing it cooler, TSNs and the ITGs, and we went, well, fuck, now we gotta, you know, fuck, shit, you know. So we helped grow what everybody was building, sure, because we were a competition. We had lots of sites. Again, I'm looking at people in the room that were part of Amped, and Amped was going to come kick our ass. They didn't, but you want that. You want someone to come, you know what, I got passion too, let's do this better than them, you know. So, yeah, the idea is to keep pushing the envelope for everybody.
Not exactly the same thing, but another really innovative and important part of Gottfried was GameSense. Were you a part of that at all?
Not really, other than like helping beta test it and everything. I'm not a huge sports guy, so like I'm not flipping to the back page and reading like batting averages and tracking that kind of shit or fantasy football or any of that. I understood the need and how cool it was that we had those stats available, and if we parsed them, how cool it would be. But I cannot take any credit for the creation of it, other than maybe some of the aesthetics, right? And you bring up GameSense, and one of the coolest things after we launched it, this guy Warthog, one of the guys that worked for us, because it's one thing to gather them all and just put him on a document, and you can, here's the match stats. But he went through map by map, gun by gun, round by round, and the first time he did it, he did a huge article on what the stats meant, right? And stuff like the team that wins, gets the first kill on a round, has a 75% chance of winning the round. He did the math on stuff and put it in layman's terms. And then when you read that shit and how the stats played out on maps, like this is a CT, like when the team starts on CT on Dust too, this is what happens. And the crowning achievement for me was like that I knew this worked and people were embracing it. I was weird kismet story, but I'm standing behind Evil Geniuses Canadian Counter-Strike team as a Gottfried guy watching, because Alex Garfield and I go way back, and I was always a fan of their players, Stevenson and Black Panther. And Black Panther at that point was the strat caller. He's sitting right in the middle, right? And they win the pistol round. And he's a really outspoken kid, Robert. And he looks left and right, and he goes, GameSense says that we're 75% chance of winning this round. Let's fucking do it. And I was standing, I think, next to Jason Bass, who at that point, now with Complexity, was also with Gottfried. And I looked at him, and I smiled, and I go, I guess the players think this shit's pretty cool, you know? Like they're the athlete reading about their stats, right, and taking it to heart. And I was like, that shit's for real.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, I can't state enough how amazing Gottfried for me was personally. Just, I mean, what I'm doing now, this esports journalism thing. I mean, without Gottfried, I probably never would have gotten the idea. And other sites, Battle Reports, Team Liquid, other things like that. Gottfried really shaped an entire generation, as far as esports generation goes, shaped the way they think about esports, I think. Yep. I know that for me, it's the sort of thing that gave me the idea to do this. So thank you for that. Whenever I talk to Midway or you or anything, it's sort of like you get a little star worship. I mean, short of boxer, I don't really think
wow.
about that. But
put me in the same sentence. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
let
me
me
take that back.
Please don't. Yeah, wow.
But I mean, just the Gottfrag, the whole entity was really amazing for me. So it was really cool to see that.
It was good. It was good shit. I mean, I'm looking around the room and I'm going, got frag, all tons of these people in this room, you know, all me. I don't know if I'd be where I was now if I wouldn't have said, let me help you guys. Who knows, you know? Rest in peace. Although I keep hearing these like floaty rumors that MLG might resurrect it.
Well, I don't think it's a rumor so much as Sundance is tweeting about it.
Yeah,
so hard to, when it's the CEO saying it, it's hard to really call it.
Well, he's pretty good at like stirring the pot, if you will. So we'll see. Be nice to see it come back. It's kind of a shame, but it is what it is. It's business, so. Yeah,
well, you know, going back there, you look at the front page, and it's sort of like your heart kind of sinks. But if you spend 2 minutes in Google, Godfrey still has some amazing content that I run across doing research and then just for fun. So I mean, I recommend. There's this whole idea right now among everybody who's been here before, you know, 2010, 2009, that esports history isn't really appreciated by the new generation, and Godfrag is one of those resources that is really underutilized, I think, by the new generation. You go back and even Counter-Strike. I mean, obviously they're amazing, but other things, they wrote a lot about everything right up until, you know, the end.
Yep.
Let's talk about the end, actually. Let's talk about when MLG brought it. You thought that they would, at least the way Midway put it was, they promised a lot of resources. It was to compete with CGS. When CGS went down, they thought they didn't need it anymore, and they let it go. What was your role in that, and how did it feel to see something like that sort of fall by the wayside?
You know, I would definitely, you know, back up what Midway said. They went on a shopping spree at that point. CGS was up and running, obviously very PC heavy, very much big money media, real world media company, sponsored, DirecTV, etc. And MLG had just been infused with a shitload of venture capital, and you know, so they went shopping. Not only they bought Got Fragged, they bought MMO Champions. They went on to buy a couple other entities along the way, and at that point, Sundance was still, you know, one of the founders, but the company was being run by Matthew Bromberg, and more of a corporate suit mentality. Outside gamers that were brought in to do just that, grow the portfolio of MLG. So again, they went on a shopping spree. We were part of that, and for our part, we as Midway said, like, somebody was probably going to buy us, and we needed to grow, so we were going to try to get bought by somebody. You know, they weren't the only people we were talking to, but it ended up being who bought us. And for quite a while, it was great. You know, they did start off with doing exactly what they said. When they did buy us, I was vice president of Godfrey TV. We kind of had a small studio. It's kind of full circle. We had a small studio in my house, which is what I have again. And they infused us with some capital. I was able to upgrade my gear. I was able to move staff from remote locations to truly Phoenix. And they enabled me to like rent a studio. So we rented a little office. Everyone moved. Jesuit moved to town. Alchemist moved to town. Nick B moved to town. I had a little crew. So we could do a lot more Godfrey TV stuff. And that's when you saw the Revival Cups and out of our little green screen studio. But it truly was a studio. You know, they paid rent. They did all that stuff for us. CGS is still going at that point, so they were doing good on what they said. Let's help you grow too, and then, you know, CGS went kaput, and they went, wow, we are spending a lot of money in these lot of areas that we don't really need to, you know. So they kind of asked us. They didn't want to close us for Godfrag, and they liked Godfrag TV. We actually helped the MLG guys at the time that were streaming Halo figure out a way to stream their Halo better. At that point, they had just done some recap video seasons on USA Network. You know, they'd been on TV before. People were like, TV, but they've done it twice. They were on G4 most recently, and before that, they did their whole season on USA Network. But it was go do the event, film it all, take it all into a production studio, chop, make recaps, take the player cams they shot, you know, post-produce them on the player's POV, and then make a show, right? And we had better gear than them, and so their live streams were very low key. They were filming for post production. And I'm all about live. It's a different way to set ship up, and sometimes it's more stressful, but it's much easier to produce a show live than to film all the assets and go into an editing bay and try to tell the story. So they saw what we were doing, saw the gear we had, and they came to us and said, how do we make our Halo Live look like we post-produced it? Because they were doing cool shit. They would show Walshy's play view, little picture down here, and a lower third with his name. And the TriCaster stuff allows you to bind some key sets together with your graphics and your 2 different camera angles and hit one button and do that. And we were kind of already doing that. So they literally flew out to my little studio. They wanted to know if they should buy one. And I said, give me 5 minutes. Let me show you. And Alchemist is sitting at our desk. And I'm like, here's in-game of Counter-Strike. Here's Alchemist's little web camera shot. And here's his graphic. Show them, because they're production guys. So they saw them as in-game. And I go, no, watch this. Hit one button. And they all kind of appeared together in real time. And he's like, whoa, so we could program that and have all our Halo guys, and all I got to do is do this and the graphic and his pitch. And I was like, as long as you lay it out properly, yes. It blew their mind. So they then went and bought the gear. I actually helped switch that MLG Meadowlands after they bought us, and I kind of showed them the TriCaster. And now, obviously, they're 12,000 times better with even more gear. So that's really what that's what they loved Godfrey TV for. But then, bittersweet pill is they liked what we did so much that it was like, we really like what you do, but we're kind of trying to trim a little bit, and we'd like you, and all of their guys are in New York, all their video guys, their little studio, all that stuff's like, we need you to come play with us. There's no sense having a studio in Phoenix and a studio in New York at this point in this economy and all this stuff. Because also, part of what killed CGS was the economy tanked, right? So they went on a spending spree and went, whoa, we got to pull back, right? So we were a budget trim. And, I didn't want to move. I own my house in Phoenix. I'm of an age that New York isn't like a young man's adventure for me. If I would have been 25, I'd have been like, yeah, I'm going to fucking New York. Let's do this. So, we politely, all of us basically politely declined and moved back home when I was in Phoenix. Yeah, so that was bittersweet. But again, without that, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. I wouldn't have probably got to play with that kind of production gear, and I certainly wouldn't be doing OneMoreGame.tv and the stuff I do now. The bittersweet part about it is, and it's probably with any business that someone helps build up that you then sell off. Sure, you make a profit, you get some rewards for your hard work, but you want your baby to kind of stay cool and stay relevant. And it's really sad for me to go back there now, like, because it's the exact same site, but it's not, right? It literally looks the same, but posts are a couple years old. Actually the saddest day was when I went back to it and they literally took 1.6 off the main nav. And it's like, are you fucking kidding me?
Everything now is World of Warcraft. Every single news post.
So, and again, like, no, they're not paying anyone to run it. It's not, there's no new content. It's just sitting there, And at one point, I called up Lee, and I'm like, can you just direct it to MLG or something? This is depressing as fuck, That was a couple years ago, and obviously it's still sitting with the same content.
I'm glad they didn't.
Yeah, so it's sad, But again, that's the other side of having an ownership stake in something, and when you decide to sell it, you lose the rights for what happens to it, And I would say they did really good by us for as long as they financially could. We all got treated really well. So I have no hard feelings for MLG at all. I worked for them for about 18 months, I think I was there. But, again, without that experience, if I was still with them, then I'd still be with them. And I'm having more fun now than I've ever fucking had in esports, So I owe them a gratitude for, like, allowing us to play for a while in their sandbox.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, that story sort of can be repeated. A lot of people become emotionally attached to some extent to brands. As silly as it might sound, Godfrag, certainly, Team Liquid's been around for a long time. And, the mid-2000s when Brood War in the West was sort of, in a steep decline, you went to TL and it was sort of, it was depressing in a very similar way. So, like you said, a lot of talk lately about Godfrey coming back under the MLG banner. You were there when they were under MLG. Can they capture the same magic? Yeah,
you asked this question at Midway, and no. As long as everyone knows that they're owned by a league, and I guess it's a no caveat depending on what they bring back and what they decide to cover. Mm-hmm. I certainly can't say that they couldn't decide corporately that, you know, we will be unbiased, we will separate church and state, if you will, and Gottfrag writers can write whatever they want. And let's say they started covering StarCraft 2. Prime example. Let's say they covered StarCraft 2, and MLG has issues at an event. They have some failures, some shit goes wrong. Maybe it's bad admin calls, whatever it happens to be. Would they ever let the dark light of truth show up, right? The same thing that Midway was worried about, being unbiased and having the door closed on you. Would they ever give themselves bad press on their own website? ESPN doesn't have to worry about talking about steroids and the problems in baseball. Baseball's not going to shut them out. So where would they lean? Would they give their competitors the same, you know, kind of pizzazz and good coverage as they give their own event? So again, we'll truly have to see if it comes back and what it comes back as. But you know, the NFL does a lot of their own content. They do, you know, the NFL Network, they stream and stuff. But do you ever see any sort of negative, like, investigative, journalistic, behind-the-scenes negative stuff? Like, I'm thinking of like a Real Sports documentary that, like, it's always, you know, it's promotional good coverage, right? So we'll see. And frankly, at this point, depending on what they come back and try to do, they're going to compete with someone who's already doing it better, right? So if they do StarCraft, what are they going to compete with? Team Liquid? Who are they going to compete with? If they decide to do all sorts of games, now they're going to compete with you guys. So I don't know. I'm rambling a little bit, but at the end of the day, I won't say I don't think it's not a good idea, because anyone producing content that a fan wants to read and might be engaged by is a good thing. But will they be the Gottfrag of old? Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
I wonder how they'll come out and frame that, because obviously that's going to be there. They're going to be MLG's Gottfrag. I wonder if they're going to come out and frame themselves as, okay, we're esports journalism. Yes, we're owned by MLG, but please give us some credit, try and do this. Maybe they'll do that, or maybe they won't even try for the real journalistic angle. It's going to be interesting to see what sort of approach they take. I do think it's coming back very soon, and I know that Sundance must have thought about this. If he hasn't, he should start thinking about it soon, but it's an interesting thing to wonder about. Let's get back to streaming for a second, because that was your forte for a while. How has streaming changed the revenue, the business model for teams and for players?
Oh, it's huge. Video in general, video content, whether it's YouTube or, you know, just the whole concept of being able to cheaply produce good, you know, production value video. It used to be, back in the day, logo on your shirt, how big is it, where is it, and what's your page views on your website. Now, like, page views are not that important. It's your video content, it's your social media, how many Twitter followers do you have, what's your Facebook like, what's your engagement levels and that stuff. But you know, everything from a kid being able to buy a couple $100 capture card and put it in his rig and do his own stuff, to stuff like XSplit and Wirecast. Like, technology has vastly improved. I mean, literally for free, I can go to an online service, whether it's Twitch or Ustream or any of the other ones, make an account, download some free software, and what now XSplit you got to pay for, but there's other ones, and I can be streaming, right? And then with a little bit of money, I can plug a couple cameras in. I can add a couple microphones, and I'm producing content that was way more expensive to produce even 5 years ago. And again, much like I said earlier, people would rather watch and be entertained than read, unless you're a little bit more cerebral. It's just opened the floodgates, and like, the bandwidth is now free. So it absolutely is huge for us. I mean, anyone who pays attention to Team EG, we do a shitload of video. We run the EG Masters Cup video streams. You know, we didn't just make that tournament to give away $10,000 to some teams. It's also about the content behind it. You know, and we stream 3 hours a night, 4 nights a week for our sponsors for that, and for you know, that helps teams. It gives exposure, because again, it's all about, at the end of the day, getting everyone's brands in front of fans, so they can pick the teams they like and pick the players they want to support. You know, because it's about fans and players. You know, my job, and I say it to everybody, is to make the players as rich as fucking possible, right? And if I make them superstars, to do that, they have to have fans for that even to happen, right? So it opens that up. It makes it possible very, very inexpensively for a lot of teams and a lot of, you know, entities. Same with you guys. Look what you're doing right now, right?
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's amazing how it's democratized the industry in a lot of ways. Any kid, like you just said, any kid can buy some equipment, get online, and all of a sudden he has a potential market of hundreds of thousands of loyal viewers, really loyal viewers, because people are super excited about esports right now. It's an industry that people see as on the rise. And guys like Ash Joshi, who now is working for IPL, just sat down in front of his computer, got a following, and that was amazing. And that itself is sort of, it's circular. They see that they can do that. That gets them excited about esports, and then they do that, and that gets the next person excited.
Exactly.
So it's pretty amazing. Now, we're going to move to streaming. Just for one quick question about television.
Sure.
We briefly mentioned it. So since the dawn of time, you know, TV's sort of been the dream. Street Fighter, arcades, Doom, Quake. TV's been the dream. Is it your dream?
I would say it was before internet streaming and like even the real world, if you will, moved to watching their shit online. You know, I can watch my episodes of The Office online, my favorite TV shows. I don't need to be in front of my TV to watch anymore, right? Yeah. I think it's still something that we should all want to see happen because it will give us a mainstream legitimacy that you wouldn't necessarily get if you stay stream only. It's been on TV now. You know, the CGS put it on live TV. They did a lot of things that made it more game showy and less a sportscast. And again, for all 12 million reasons, they're no longer with us.
It seemed like wrestling, like professional wrestling.
Prime example. I mean, they bust in fans. They gave them fake thunder sticks. They paid them.
They weren't the players.
They weren't real fans. Yeah, they weren't real fans. Yeah. You know, the whole thing was a show. It wasn't. They didn't roll into an arena and film a sporting event. They made a TV game show. Some of it was really cool, you know, and it was neat to see. It was really cool because they did a couple of those CGIs, those like demo test events, and you know, at Gottfried, we went to all of them, and you know, they gave us a tour of their production facility, and I was rolling in. You know, Alchemist and I walked into, you know, we're Gottfried TV. We work on a 6-foot table with a bunch of monitors, like that Counter-Strike setup, right? And we roll into an 18-wheeler that like 2 weeks before was at a Monday Night Football game, like producing the show, and it's that kind of, you're at a fucking production room, but it's a truck, and we were kids in a fucking candy store, you know, but they hadn't shown us any video yet. This is what they were gonna do, and so we were like, oh my fucking god, it's here. I'm standing in a real multi-million-dollar production truck, and they're gonna film video games this weekend. Well, I mean, they used a lot of gear and made it look really fucking hokey, but so I don't think it's our savior anymore because it doesn't need to be. But you know, getting it on, and we talked about it last night on Live on 3, like getting it on ESPN or anywhere else in a way that doesn't turn it into a game show and doesn't degrade the sport of whatever game they're covering, doesn't change the rules to be wacky, doesn't, you know, tweak it to where it's not what everyone is a fan of. It does nothing but helps us, right? Because it'll reach new people. But at the end of the day, do we have to have it now? Is it our golden apple? Nah. But it'd still be cool as shit, no doubt about it. If done right. If done right. You know? And some would even say, well, CGS was on TV, but it was on DirecTV Channel 101. Who watches that? That's not like being on an ESPN or a Fox or a CBS. I mean, it was a buried cable channel. Had to have DirecTV to even watch it. So, I don't know. I'm much more of a fan of TV quality production values streamed.
Okay. So, just for some context, Sundance has been tweeting about this. He's the one who tweeted about ESPN. And he's been on a little bit of a hype tear lately. He just recently tweeted, how would you guys feel about $1.5 million for next season? And I wanted to ask you about that because he actually said, would you rather have a $1 million season and a $500,000 final, or vice versa? And there's been a lot of talk about that because over the course of esports, there's been a lot of problems, and there still is, with GSL, I would say, with two top-heavy prize pools.
Yeah.
You know, they don't spread it out, and that hurts the viability as a profession and things of that nature. How do you feel about it? What would you rather see?
I would rather see a farther down pay scale of the ladder, you know, because everyone goes, and this is from the dawn of prize money in our world, first, second, third,
Yeah.
You know, and we've got X amount of money, so we're going to divide it up 3 ways, and that first number needs to be pretty cool, right? So $1 million divided to first, second, and third, that's great for 3 guys. You know, I would rather see anything distributed as far down as you can go, right? You know, we're at IPL. Just to get to 32, you already got $1,000, right? And every match you win past that round of 32, you're basically doubling your money and then going beyond that. So it's great. You know, these guys that play all these different games, some get salaries, some do not, some just get travel. So anything to help them get rich. You know, so I'm all for big prize purses. I'm not all big for the big marketing. We're giving away $1 million.
It's a lottery.
Yeah,
when it comes
spread
to
it down, like because that you're feeding the ecosystem, right? You're not just taking care of one team. It's great that those guys won all that money for like the Dota thing, but like would have been cool if every team walked out of there with 20K at least. You know. So I don't know. Sundance tweets a lot, and he obviously is a big mover and shaker. And their 2012 is going to be bigger and better. So we'll see what they do with it. But I'm not a fan of top-heavy marketing prize money at all.
Okay. Now let's talk about Evil Geniuses. You are the COO of Evil Geniuses. What do you do there on a day-to-day basis, and what do you do there in the bigger picture?
I would say in the bigger picture, I'm the evangelist. I am I'm kind of the front man for our management team. Alex is maybe a little shyer, a little more. He's definitely more eloquent than me. You guys interviewed him. He's a super smart guy, but he doesn't necessarily want to be that guy.
He actively doesn't want to be that
Yeah,
guy,
and he's getting better at it because he knows that he should be part of this as well. You know, he's got a good voice and he's really smart, so he does give good interviews. He does give good perspective. He's been around a long time, and the people knowing who, because again, he got called a corporate suit a couple times. Right? Because no one, I've been the face the last 2 years, right? Everyone thinks I own it, I run it. I've been here forever. I joined like less than 3 years ago, right? So I'm definitely the guy that gives more interviews. I do a lot of the data, like the StarCraft house in Phoenix was my project, so I actively manage that. Obviously, Anna Prosser lives in it, so she does a lot of that as well. It's weird. I don't have a whole lot of like duties. Those are spread to Alex has him and a couple of the guys on staff are in charge of sponsorships. So like I don't go into boardrooms and give PowerPoint presentations, and I don't bring the money in. I keep the money here, I guess, in a weird way. And Alex and his crew and Colin and Brandon are really, really good at that. The PowerPoints and then closing deals and getting deals and pitching stuff. I'm more of, again, much like my job of event logistics, I'm more the guy like on the ground making it happen. Again, that's why we did the title change. I'm more of an operator, and he's more of the executive getting us financed and keeping us financed. I think I deal in some regards with the players more than he does, and then the management that manages the players. I'm more that hands-on guy. He also doesn't necessarily like to travel all that much, and I have no problem with it. I did it all my life, so I tend to go to more events, which also makes me more that face, right? But at the end of the day, we are, much like all you guys, we're very much in startup mode. We all wear 12 million hats. I mean, we're here to get it all done. So no one goes, that's not my job, that's his job. This is not corporate America in cubicles, right? Yeah. So, yeah. Day to day, and again, one of my big things is any kind of video you see that the tips and tricks and all the Masters Cup streams and stuff we do. That's all kind of my world.
Okay, yeah. Let's talk about a recent event in EG's history, the signing of Huck.
Sure.
And how he has a salary which has been described as life changing. Is the way that I believe Nazgul and Huck himself described it. One thing that came up shortly after that was what happened with Warcraft 3 a couple of years ago, specifically with Meet Your Makers, where they started paying people exorbitant amounts. They pushed other teams out of the scene. The scene shrunk. They were unable to keep up the business model. The bubble burst. And it was just another one of, another episode in the esports bubble and burst thing. Are episodes like that ever on your mind when you're making these kind of signings?
I mean, absolutely. It's one of the first things that we started talking about. Even when we recruited Greg before we recruited Huck, he makes a good chunk of change. We're all here to run our own little businesses, but most of us still have this greater good mentality still, right? We're not so cutthroat that we don't care about everybody else. So we definitely thought about that. Like, are we Are we going to set a trend that is, even though we can afford it and we're going to be okay, that we're really going to detrimentally hurt everybody else?
Well, even with the cutthroat, it sort of, NYM hurt themselves. It wasn't about being cutthroat. It's the fact that they actually shrunk the community and then shrunk their own business.
Yeah. I mean, I think the difference between the two is they took investment money, not sponsorship dollars, and went for it, right? You know, good on them. We're going to have all the best guys, and we're going to pay them a shitload of money. What they didn't have, that we all have now, is 12 million different ways to get return on investment.
Revenue.
Back then, they had to get their money back on page views and those kind of things, right? And there's no way they can recoup those costs. So they put themselves in a financial hole. What happened to them? They went out of business, right? And so not only did they set the bar so high, they set it so high they couldn't even keep up with it because they didn't, like, Chris makes a good chunk of change and Greg makes a good chunk of change because we can afford, we have these revenue streams that make it feasible not only to do right now, but next year and the year after and the year after. You know, people buy shirts now. People tune into streams now. It's not just us. So I look at it more like we're setting the bar, but it's a bar that is attainable by a lot of other teams too if they do things the right way. You know, I hope we're open, just like our team house. Like, I want others now to go, okay, how do we afford this properly? And then they open a team house, right? And we have an advantage because we've been a brand in the business longer than anybody else almost now. I mean, even Complexity went away. They became a CGS brand, lost all their swagger, lost all their real sponsors. You know, they sold it. And knock on wood, thank God for Bass and Lake, they're now slowly building that brand back to what it was, both financially and sponsorship dollars outside of that. But we're kind of ahead of the curve on a lot of teams, and that sucks for them, you know, because I say it all the time. I need lots of teams to go play, you know, and I'll have a very friendly rivalry with you. But if we're the greatest team in all the world and there's no one to play, then everything we've done means zero. Because who do they play against, right? So I think we're setting the bar in an attainable way now, right? Because again, outside of us, there's shirts, there's mouse pads, there's all sorts of ways you can pay Huck, you know, and pay your players.
How do you evaluate a player's financial worth?
That's an iffy one, you know, because it's very speculative. Because we don't take cuts of prize money, and some teams do. I think they're all fairly reasonable admin-sized cuts. Like, I don't think anyone's getting ripped off. But so we can't look at a guy like Huck and go, okay, well, he's probably going to win 5 tournaments, you know, on average. And you know, you can't look at like you can't lock any kind of formula in. You can just look at how popular he is, what you think you can do for his brand to then get ROI on, and what. It's not always getting it all back. Like, he's a marketing piece of EG. He helps us be a brand, right? So that should cost us some money. How much of that investment into that player can you recoup? If you can recoup all of it, and then all of you make money on top of that, that's real sports, right? But he's an investment, you know, at this point. I think we'll get, with the players that we recruit that, you know, we deal with, we have these different revenue streams, so we're not worried about like, oh, Huck's going to put us out of business. You know, I mean, again, I want Huck to have life-changing money, but I want Thorsnane to have it, and I want Select to have it, and I want the Koreans that don't have it yet. That, you know, I want them to have Broodmore money. Like, I want everyone to. So the worth is very, very iffy. But you can look at things like, okay, well, Greg turns his stream on. He gets X amount of people that watch every frickin' day, you know. You first look at what that is, and then you go, okay, how do we monetize that for Greg? How do we help Greg monetize that? How do we use that to help us? You know, and those are all things that, little pieces that feed to pay these guys' bills, right? And again, everything around us has made it all more feasible.
So EG is a team where even if a player isn't going out and winning tournaments, he's still completely active in the community. He's still doing a million different things, got their hands in a million different places. So when you're evaluating a player, and when they're on your team, what is the value of popularity versus results? How important are the two?
I would say I probably couldn't put percentages on them. I mean, they're both very, very important because, again, at the end of the day, it's at this stage of the game, it's about a fan base, right? And someone might be fantastic at that, whatever game it happens to be. But if they can't give an interview, if they have no charisma or no personality and they're just a quiet robot, it's really hard to sell them to a sponsor. Hey, have this guy come to PAX and he'll do shootouts and he'll engage and help sell Kingston Ram, or he'll talk to, do autographs. If the guy's a bump on a log, it makes it much, much harder. So personality and them being able to carry themselves, if they have some sort of swagger already, like obviously when we recruited Greg, we knew exactly that we were recruiting an outspoken foreigner who talked a lot of smack, who didn't necessarily show a lot of respect for his opponents, but we knew that going in. Now, did we go, and it's going to be great, we'll make so much money because of it? No, but that meant that he had a personality, he had a fan base, and he had an anti-fan base, right? You either love Greg or you love to hate Greg, and that's A-OK, right? You love Derek Jeter or you love to hate the guy, right? Personality is big, but not necessarily they have to be super nice people, right? Like not on our team, everyone doesn't have to be a sweetheart like the Muslim or Machine, right? I mean, In Control is a prime example. He hasn't had the greatest season. He's not winning a lot. He's having some frustrating goes. But he is such a good, eloquent, positive voice for not only what we do, but for what he's done for years, right? So it's not like we would keep a guy around just for that. There is a minimal threshold. But we don't sit there and go, well, God, dude, you haven't won, so we're going to cut you. You definitely weigh people's values, and all that adds into it. At the end of the day, do I want all my guys to win fucking tournaments every day? Yeah. This particular game, not going to happen, right? Greg might not win for another year. There's a lot of really good StarCraft 2 players, right? So it's a guessing game, and just like it is in sports. Do we recruit that rookie? Do we use our draft pick for this? Because on paper, ooh, but that doesn't pan out all the time either, right? So
yeah. Years ago, when Team 3D would put Moto in front of the camera rather than Rambo, who was the best player, that was sort of seen. Well, it was seen in different ways. It was seen positively, negatively, but it was an amazing thing. I think now, obviously, a lot of teams have caught on and they pay more attention. And I think EG is the epitome of a team that pays attention to the presentation of its players. So the question would be, how much effort does EG put into the presentation of its players? Is it true that each one of these guys has received training in the way that they speak to the media and the public?
Yeah, I mean, they're all definitely, training in the sense of, like, we don't fly them to some, like, seminars and stuff. But, yeah, we definitely have sit-downs with all of them and say, this is how we'd like you to, talk about our sponsors. And unfortunately for them, as we keep adding sponsors, it's much harder to remember all these things. So poor guys, But, yeah, we definitely, sit them down. I mean, again, I'm a very comfortable speaker. I can talk to anybody about anything, that's obviously, right? I sit down with them and have conversations. All of the other guys, Colin, Alex, Brandon, Lucas, now Cody, who's our GM, you watch an interview, and then afterwards you go, hey, the way you answered this question was fantastic. That's perfect. Or the way you gave that answer, or the way you did the sponsor shout-out, you should do it like this, because they're all intelligent guys. I think almost any pro gamer, no matter what game he plays, not a lot of dummies are the top pros in any of their games, so they get it. They just might be more nervous. They might not be good public speakers. So some will literally practice more, and some are just very eloquent. Like Greg is amazingly eloquent. So is In Control. So we definitely train them, and another added bonus to having Anna around our players is she is an amazing public speaker and actually has a consulting business where she gets hired to help people who get really nervous giving job interviews, right? And she gets paid to like do mock interviews and let me help you with speech writing, all that kind of stuff. So she's constantly watching what we do and, hey, think about saying it this way. That's more your voice, right? You're sounding like somebody else, So we all collectively try to help each other, right? Like after I do interviews, my crew will watch stuff and they'll go, Scoots, you took too long to make that point. Try to say it this way, and I'll go, oh, okay, good to hear, So, yeah. So that at the end of the day, yes, they get some training for sure.
So I mean, it sounds like, in the way that one team might sit around and watch a player's game and then critique it, you guys sit around, watch an interview, and then critique it.
Yeah, yeah. None of us on management are. The only game that I would feel comfortable actually truly giving, like, game coaching, if you will, to would be Counter-Strike. And I used to do that because that's a game that I know that just because you're someone's boss doesn't mean that, like I'll use Greg as a prime example. If Greg had a bad game, and Greg knows me and he knows my StarCraft abilities, if I sat him down and went, look, dude, your build order, this is what you're doing on, he would not necessarily respect that opinion because I'm not vetted, right? And just because I'm his boss, he's not going to listen to stupid advice, right? So I'm not a coach. But my Counter-Strike team,
You're really putting your head in the crosshairs.
Yeah, but our Counter-Strike team, not so much anymore, but like when I traveled and they had a lot of events too, I'd be like, your pistol round needs work, boys. You're never going to be able to get into B if you don't do this, this, and this. And they'd go, they'd know I'd played enough. Not only had I played enough, but I'd watched enough of it, right? I guess we coach their out-of-game skills more than we coach their in-game because they all coach themselves in-game, right? And that brings up the next question about coaches probably. But, so that, again, I would just get laughed at by it'd be like saying Justin Wong, man, you dropped that hold, and if he would just look at me and go, you trolling me, bro, yeah.
All right. Speaking of Justin Wong, let's go into the fact that EG has its hands everywhere, fighting, FPS, RTS. Historically, these scenes have been separate, and now they're. I mean, do you see that changing lately?
I see a little more cross-pollination than I ever saw, and maybe a little bit more mutual respect of one genre to another.
The rivalry seems to be cooling, whatever it was.
Yeah, I think the rivalry. I think the big rivalry we have now is console versus PC. But I think within games, what we've noticed in the last couple of years is guys on and especially because we're cross-pollinating. I got fighters at fighting tournaments and they're tweeting to, good luck, like Justin Wong tweeted today or yesterday, good luck to all the EG guys in Atlantic City, wish you were here with us in Devastation, right? And so, and In Control will tweet something back probably, like, you guys kick ass there too, right? And you've got, what Marcus and I have noticed is when Justin's on, and there's this guy named Ski Sonic who's one of the broadcasters of that genre of games for a couple different companies, and he plays some StarCraft. And so when Justin Wong is being streamed, Ski Sonic will say shit like, yeah, he's with Evil Geniuses, and they've got one of the best StarCraft 2 teams in the world, Idra plays for them, Huck plays for them, and he's talking to his streaming community, right? And, invariably someone like, fucking game's stupid. But, they cross-pollinate, right? And it's really, really cool. The analogy I always make is, again, to me this is a sport, and the only thing you can debate me on is how athletic it is, But it's a sport. You might love baseball. I might love hockey. You might love StarCraft 2. I might love Street Fighter. But they're both sports with competitors that play it at the very peak of it, and it's very hard to be at the peak of it. And so I think you see some of these communities nodding to the mutual respect of how hard it is to be a top-level fighter, top-level Street, StarCraft or Counter-Strike team, and that's really cool. It's like snowboarders respecting skateboarders. Or the BMX guys on the tour. Same kind of thing.
So in, 10 years ago when FPS was king in America, I remember pretty vividly, because my two games are Counter-Strike and StarCraft, I remember pretty vividly in the Gottfried forums or in a news article, Americans would be saying, RTS will never make it in the West. It'll be in the East, but it'll never make it in the West. We don't have the attention span. They'd come up with all these reasons, and they all seemed logical at the time, although I also secretly harbored a hatred for the Warcraft community, so I was sort of like, well, if it wasn't Warcraft. What changed?
I don't know, because I was one of those guys, because I'm not an RTS player, right? I mean, I played Warcraft, but I played it and kept hitting the little peon to hear him, ready to serve, and, and I'd just fuck around, build my walls and shit, and, it was kind of fun, but it didn't stick for very long. And I remember
that's how the rest of us StarCraft players felt too. So.
Yeah, for that game, yeah. But if I recall, CPL threw a Warcraft tournament one time, And, you know, all of us FPSers are like, get that shit out of our room, you know? What are you doing here, you know? And they brought Halo PC one time. Like, get that shit out of our room. We're playing Counter-Strike, you know. No Euros are flying
over the rivalry.
Yeah. So I don't, but, like, in talking to, like, the In Controls and all the guys that lived on Team Liquid that whole time with StarCraft, kind of the, watching Korea have a huge sport, it was almost like a lurking giant waiting, right? Like, our time will come. We're going to wait. We're going to wait. I don't know if it's something along the lines of, from the time of StarCraft to StarCraft 2, Blizzard comes out with a game called World of Warcraft and, like, makes their name and their pedigree in front of millions and millions of more people. Mm-hmm. Like, so then now, WoW, then this new game comes out, and, like, the question is how many people that play and are excited about StarCraft 2 played StarCraft, and how many did it suck in? I think more than anything else, 5 years ago we had less gamers. You know, within the last 5 years, gaming has eclipsed Hollywood movie making as a business. You know, every fucking movie that comes out now has a game tie-in, right? It's a big money business, so there's just a lot more gamers. But why all of a sudden RTS? I think RTSs are a very cerebral, and I like to use, like, the dumbed down term of it's a very thinky game, right? I mean, there's definitely strategy and there's a thought process to playing Counter-Strike, but there's a few things you think about and you're done, and then you're thinking about strategy of taking over a bomb site. But it's not like Quake. Even where you have to, in your mind, time different armors and, like, do that kind of shit on the fly all game long. It's not having to figure out build orders and time them and counters to this and counters to that. You know, Counter-Strike, you try to rush into B and you get shut down and you fucking rotate to A. That is your plan, right? So it's definitely, again, a more thinky game, a more cerebral game. So why did we embrace it? Why? But it's not just us. Why did the world embrace it, right? Because StarCraft lived in Korea, and now StarCraft 2 lives everywhere. I attribute it to a lot of Blizzard and a lot more gamers, and back to video being available and streaming being available. You know, you look at guys like Day 9. So I might have bought StarCraft 2, right? And I install it, and I play the campaign, and okay, I can get through this, you know. Yeah, this is cool. And then you hit that, like, play online button, and you get your ass kicked, right? And you're either going to be like, okay, multiplayer is not for me, or you're going to go, how do I get better? 5 years ago, you Google, and you're kind of screwed. There's not a whole lot, right? Now, a plethora of resources, whether it's written or on video, of, like, how to get better, you know, for lots of games. That helps the guy go from casual to maybe not wanting to play to going, okay, let me commit a little bit. Oh, let me write this. Let me print this build order out. Let me try this. Oh shit, this works. You know, like, I'm still definitely afraid to hit the placement button. You know, because I'm a competitor, right? I don't want to lose. Yeah. But so I don't want to start it yet because I want to start it and kick ass and I want to be streaming it. You know. And then the other thing that I would think that has changed it is the simple fact that it's challenging enough to enough people, right? It's like, why does someone want to get 5 prestiges in Call of Duty once you get 1, right? You know, because you want to end up being the best at it. And again, being more gamers, if you embrace the competitive platform of any game you're playing, and you're that nature, that's, again, where you dig into the resources, right? And you want to compete. There's all these different cups. There's a lot more places to then test your mettle, right? Whether it's Megumi doing these little bear cubs that are just for beginners, which is what you need, or it's going to the MLGs, saving your money and coming here. There's a lot more of it, right? Back in the day, you had 2 CPLs to save your money for, yeah. Right? So I think all of that. And gaming is overarchingly more accepted as not an uncool, totally nerdy, you're all zitted up, sitting in your parents' basement thing to do. It's a cooler thing to do. And again, that's where I say that Blizzard helped. I mean, some of we can laugh at those WoW commercials they did that, like, Mr. T did and William Shatner did, but that shit, like, validates it to everyone who thought we're all nerds, we're all geeks, whatever you want to call us, and that's a badge of honor now, versus where's your pocket protector, right? So it's a combination of millions of things, right? And this game is now, like someone asked me the other day, is like, well, is it going to go away in a year or two? And I go, yeah, but it'll be replaced by the next expansion or StarCraft 3 or like this is, we've got our sport for like another 10 years, at least one of them, I think, at least. So as long as Blizzard doesn't totally screw the pooch.
Right.
You know.
We shall see. One of the, coming from StarCraft, one of the things I noticed was that, 10 years ago there was Quake, there was Counter-Strike, there was StarCraft. They all came out at about the same time. They were all rising for many years. And then Counter-Strike declined. Quake declined. StarCraft kept going. And there became, in the esports community, sort of an aura about StarCraft that I saw. It was, wow, this is a game that can last. And then through, fluke of luck, the esports in the West sort of burst. And StarCraft 2 came out at just the right time. It was this game with this pedigree like none other, and it came out at a time when everything else was down in the dumps. And all of a sudden, everyone in esports, everyone that I knew that ever had any hand in esports was like, all right, I'm going to look at StarCraft. Is that something that you saw happen?
Absolutely. I mean, on the business side of it, this goes back to like stream numbers and fan bases, It would be completely asinine to throw a large-scale LAN and not try to have StarCraft 2 at it. Just like it's pretty much going to be pretty stupid not to have a MOBA game, right? The numbers dictate that it's the real deal, right? And now, unfortunately, Counter-Strike streams don't compare. So leagues and events have limited budgets to spend. Where are you going to spend it? Where you're going to get this kind of exposure and this kind of rabid fan base, or you're going to cater to an old school thing, right? And we're seeing Quake slowly get dropped off the circuit because doesn't have enough return on investment. Counter-Strike doesn't have enough return on the investment. It's going to get replaced by the new, more popular sports. It's unfortunate if you're a fan of one of those games, but it's the greatest thing if you're you guys that are StarCrafters, right? And you mentioned the term pedigree. It's not a new game. It's a new version of a very, very, very successful game done right. It's kind of like if Counter-Strike Source would have been as good as it was supposed to be. Like all of us in Counter-Strike are like, we need our Counter-Strike 2. StarCraft got its StarCraft 2, and look what the fuck is happening, right? We need our Counter-Strike 2. And so we're all haphazardly abuzz with the potential of Counter-Strike Go. But a lot of things are very nervous about that situation. But you want to hope, right? But again, then you go back to the original part, earlier in the interview. How do you properly show it? Because it's still the same game, 10 guys running around. How do you stream it right? How do you make it engaging content? It's really easy to show a game of StarCraft. There's better ways to show it, but a good observer, a good set of casters, and you can tell the story of the match, because it's a story. And that's the biggest bummer about Quake, because it is a really easy game to show, and it's a really easy game.
The easiest, I would say.
Yeah, to me it's much like Street Fighter. Like, you don't have to know shit about either game, never played an FPS, and never picked up an arcade stick. But if you sit and watch, you go, this is just like boxing. I got health meters, I can see people, they're beating each other up, right? You look at Quake, one guy's running around with guns, another guy's running around with guns, and I got a scoreboard. He killed him. He gets one. He killed one. It's like scoring a goal, right? And then, once you're intrigued, you get into the nuance of, okay, what did he just grab? Well, that's the red armor. Okay, what's the significance of that, right? And that's when, then you slowly start realizing how difficult what these guys are doing is, It's one thing, like you can watch StarCraft and go, oh, he's building a big-ass army. Like, it's two guys playing army. I got my army, you got yours, let's... And you don't have to know what counters are banely necessarily and what mutas are good for to still be entertained. But once you know that, it makes it, oh shit, here comes the mothership, But some people get excited just by the war that's happening, right? And then that sucks them into figuring out why he won, why he lost, what he did right, what he did wrong. So again, I think StarCraft didn't get lucky. It had its hardcore fan base, and they came out with a really positive, solid version of it, and they grabbed a whole new generation. Plus, they were embraced by the people that had been playing the original. It's like It's like when you open a restaurant. They always say, like, you know, your regulars will keep your restaurant open, right? And you'll have your tourists and you'll have your people that never come back, but you need your regulars in a bar, right? You need those people that come every Thursday night and have their beers. You all were waiting. You were the regulars, right, of that bar. And they just opened this huge nightclub and everybody else showed up, right? And it's packed. So, again, knock on wood, you know. And then the other thing I would say to both the growth of several of these genres is developer support. Developers truly caring and at least embracing that their game is being used in a different way than being bought at Walmart, taken home, plugged in, and they made their $50, right? Blizzard has their own tournaments, and they have it at BlizzCon, but they also are very good about licensing their IP and their games to be used by others, right? And they help support that. You know, Valve didn't ever help Counter-Strike. We know that Quake never got any help from developers, right? It's been a bone of ours forever. Riot, prime positive example of a developer who is incredibly financially supporting their own game, right? I mean, they are throwing millions and millions of dollars at the pro gaming side of what they do, which then forces their competition, Han, for example, forget Dota 2 for a second, to do the exact same thing. You know, like, again, they're fighting with each other. We all win on that, right? Now, do they have all the right tech tools? You know, they still don't have a spectator client when it comes to League of Legends. They don't have replays and demos. Like, that shit all needs to come as well. And then same thing with Dota 2. You know, they threw $1 million tournament. Will they keep doing that? Who knows? But again, no one has ever done that before, and the only people that did it before were people that were trying to sell shitty games to be the next one. Like Pain User is a prime example. That developer did get behind their game. The game was not Quake, and so it wasn't going to be the dueling game. But they tried, you know. But that's trying to buy it as an esport versus supporting it because it is an esport, right?
So you mentioned a lot there, but you mentioned Valve not supporting CS. Now Valve is coming out with Dota 2 rather, and obviously they're supporting that. They're coming out with CS:GO. There's a lot of trepidation with CS:GO, obviously, and you know that's a big can of worms, and we won't completely open it. But just on a personal level, how do you feel about its potential as an esport? Because a lot of people will come back with, it's for casuals, you know, and if you read Thorin, I thought put it out most eloquently, that Valve basically took down Counter-Strike every version as far as its validity as an esport. So what do you think about CS:GO?
I think first off, Thorin's article was spot on from a hardcore Counter-Strike enthusiast that's been in the scene. You know, as one of us, that's what that article that was his voice, right? He wasn't an outsider looking in. So I agree with a lot of it. Like I'm very nervous about it because again, we were so excited about Counter-Strike Source, and then it came out.
Yeah.
And we're like, a riot shield? What are you, you know, like all that kind of crazy shit they did. And they didn't mimic the engine, the netcode, it didn't feel the same, the recoil, where there used to be a nice, you know, line of sight and good choke points, there's now a busted car and barrels that are in the way. Like, it was just silly. So that was very depressing. So we look at that as Valve's last attempt to make our game better as a Counter-Striker. So I'm very nervous. You know, I'm certainly not dragging around, you know, the banner that it's going to save Counter-Strike and it's going to be just like StarCraft 2 and it's going to have huge. I don't know. You know, I'm anxiously hopeful. Some of the cool side of that is. They're not changing the game that much, you know, based on what we've seen and what they've said. It's still 5v5. It's still going to be, you know, the same modes, the same maps, the same guns, and they're going to tweak stuff, obviously, but they're not making one thing and calling it Counter-Strike Go. They're enhancing it, right? I like the fact that it's going to be cross-platform. So I can be home on my keyboard and mouse, and I can play someone on the 360 if they so decide to let me, because there's some matchmaking tools involved. So you'll probably be able to say, I only want to play PC only, I only want to play, you know, so. Because I remember playing Shadowrun on the PC versus guys on the 360, and you would destroy them if you were a sniper in a couple other classes. They just can't it's not as quick or as flicky. You know what I mean? Like it just you could drive better, for lack of a better word. This is not to say that it's a less of a skill. It's a different skill. You know, I can flick my wrist with a mouse quicker than you can move those thumbsticks, right? And be more accurate. So I'm excited for the cross-platform play because maybe we can finally end the debate.
Talk about the other major esport release on the horizon, Dota 2.
Yes, sure.
Do you guys have plans like picking up your old team or anything like that?
We are actively looking at all, I don't even like to call them MOBA, but
action RTS. I don't know what to call them.
Yeah.
I call it the Dota genre.
Yeah, I mean, like they're Dota games to me.
Yeah.
And that's what started it, right? You know, and you alluded to like we did at one point have a Dota team. When I joined EG, we had a Dota team. They didn't have a whole lot of places to play. They were very expensive places to play, and so and not at that point enough ROI for the spend. So we kind of let them go, right? Whole different world. Just 2 years later, right? In what we all do. So we've been looking at League of Legends and what they're doing and the teams that are growing in that. We're looking at Han and the teams and what they're doing. You know, you got to look at all the ROI, right? And you know, same thing with Dota. Dota 2 is not out yet, so that you can't say, well, Extreme Masters has it on their tour and MLG grabbed it. You can't look at it in that sense yet, but it is the game that spawned 2 very successful new businesses, right? It is the daddy of them. So, and you know, a lot of people will say that League of Legends will survive because they're Dota-like, but they're enough different in how they operate and their fan base that they're going to be A-okay with however successful Dota 2 is. A lot of people are very nervous for Heroes of New Earth because it's more of a Dota clone than League of Legends is, right? And so the communities will cannibalize each other. You're going to be Han or Dota, whereas League of Legends is over here, which is great for League of Legends, probably maybe not so good for the boys at S2 and at Han. I know a couple of the guys that actually work. It's kind of funny. Matt Marcoux, who works at Riot now, and Sashi, who works at S2, and they're both in their esports divisions. Both used to work for not only EG, but back to the very part of this interview, they worked at Got Fragged. Matt Marcoux ran a Source team. So it's kind of cool to see guys in the scene get businesses helping drive direction of these developers, right? Dota kind of has the same thing with a lot of people that have been around for a long time. Obviously, Ice Frog built the game that started it all, right? Which is weird because it started as a map on a Blizzard game, right?
Funny, yeah.
So Blizzard killing esports forever. So we're actively looking at it all. I think if we picked up any of them, I would be most excited to pick up a Dota 2 team. Simple as that.
EG is known as a North American team. Are you guys looking at the Chinese scene?
Yes, it's hard. Well, in any of those games, it's hard not to.
Yeah.
Right. It's like thinking about StarCraft 2 and ignoring Korea.
Right.
You know, it really is. I mean, these games are, and Dota especially, is literally bonkers in China. Now, so as your sponsors look to engage in those kind of countries, you look as well, right? Because we're here to represent our sponsor base too. So, and China's opening up to all of these companies, right? It's much easier to do business in China if you're selling stuff, mouse pads, whatever it happens to be. So it would be a good thing to get into, not only for the EG brand. How many? If I had a Dota team that was popular in China, how many jerseys am I going to sell? A shitload, right? How many Dota-specific cool shirts could I make that they'll eat up, right? By the hundreds of thousands, right? The fan bases.
Yeah.
I mean, did we not hear that they had like 1 million something concurrents for that one tournament?
3 million.
But most of them were out of China. 3 million. Holy crap.
Right.
So, and all their numbers are crazy, but like that's such a big number that I go, really? Are we sure?
Right.
Can I see some documentation? I mean, that's stupid. Those are numbers that never happen on TV unless, like, it's the president being inaugurated or some major Super Bowl, right? Like World Cup shit. We are, we're based in North America, but I think it's safe to say that we're a global esports organization. We have some players that are certainly not North American, and we will continue to embrace our global nature for sure.
China presents sort of a unique challenge, though. For instance, in the presentation of players, you guys place, as we talked about before, a big emphasis on being out there, being popular. A Chinese player can't have a Twitter account. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Things like that. So how do you deal with that sort of? You're saying it's opening up. It's opening up to businesses and this sort of capitalism, but it's not opening up for the people.
Yeah, agreed. But again, I kind of look at the Korean model. You can have a bunch of foreigners, but maybe you send your foreigners to China to train, right? And again, if and again, I'm speaking, from a little naivety at this point. Do I need to have Chinese players to be popular in China, or do I just need to have a good team that the Chinese respect, even if they're North American or European or anything else, right? Will they still, at the end of the day, buy my shirts, watch my streams, buy my mouse pad, support my sponsors? Or do you have to have Chinese? And that's where we do our research, because you're right. You can't, a Chinese player can't jump on Twitch TV and tweet, I'm going live, watch my stuff, right? And get 5,000. If he could, how many viewers would he get? It'd probably be disgusting.
Yeah.
So it might be, again, same kind of thing. You pick up a foreigner team, but you embed them in where the game's most popular, or at least they train there extensively.
Or, it would be surprising if this doesn't already exist. I mean, there's obviously Twitter clones in China. It would be surprising if someone in China doesn't, outright steal the Twitch TV idea and just, they don't have to deal with any IP laws, and they just do that, and they're compliant with the Chinese government, and all of a sudden the market, it's not connected in the way that you guys might like, but it's open.
Yeah.
So that's something to look at. Yeah. All right. Well, I've taken up a ton of your time, so thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's been a great interview.
Thank you guys for doing what you do, man. I mean, again, you are one of the truly independent news sources we have. So I wish you guys the best of luck. In a weird, sticky kind of way, you're kind of a new God frag, but you're doing several games, which is what we started to do at the very end, right? So, keep on keeping on,
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for what you do.
I appreciate it.
Yep.